Good afternoon. Thank you everybody for being with us today again. My name is Veronica Alvarez and I'm with Partner Resource Network. And we have again with us Allison Schaberg from Consolidated Planning Group. Thank you, Allison. It's a pleasure always to have you with us. Before we start our presentation today, we are going to be talking about special needs plannings, specifically about waivers and SSI and preserving the benefits. Before we start with that presentation and that great information, I'm going to remind everybody about Partner Resource Network. And if you are new with us, so welcome. And you are going to learn what we do at Partner Resource Network. We are the Parent Training and Information Center for Texas. And we are funded by the Department of Education, Office of Special Education, to provide free resources and training for parents of children with disabilities and youth with disabilities, that we call them self-advocates. Our mission is to empower and support Texas families and individuals impacted by disabilities or special healthcare needs. Who we serve? Parents of children with disabilities and youth with disabilities from the ages of 0 to 26 years old. Where? So we are all over Texas. We serve parents all over Texas. We have 20 regional coordinators and we have 4 different projects serving parents here in Texas. I'm part of the team project, as you can see there in the red area. I'm in Region 13 area, that's Austin and surrounding areas. And another part of team projects is Region 20, that is San Antonio, and Region 1, that is the Rio Grande Valley area. But if you are a visitor and seeing us from a different area in Texas, we have a coordinator near to you serving parents. Our services are free and we offer parent workshops, youth workshops, webinars, information and referrals, one-on-one technical assistance, support in the R meetings and IEP meetings. We do once a year a symposium. We offer parent leadership training and youth leadership trainings. So information for today's webinar. Your microphone and your video is closed. So if you have any question, please type it in the chat box or in the Q&A. And during the presentation, Allison and I, we can answer those questions. If we don't have the time, you can email us, or we can email you with the answers of the question that we didn't have the chance to answer during the live presentation. This this webinar is being recorded, and we will share this video in our Facebook pages later on this week. And also, Allison Schaberg from Consolidated Planning Group has a YouTube channel that she already put it there in the chat box, and they share also these videos with you guys for if you didn't have the chance to finish or anything like that. Oh my God, I changed my screen. I didn't finish. And at the end of this webinar, you are going to receive a link that is a survey, it's an evaluation. Please fill that evaluation. It will help us a lot. It only take you 1 or 2 minutes to fill that evaluation. We need your feedback, and also with that we can report to our grant and continue giving you guys free resources and trainings like these ones. We do not provide CEUs, but I can do a certificate of attendance. If you need one, please type it in the chat box or email me and I can make one for you. So again, my contact information, you have it there in the chat box. You can see it in here, my phone number, my email, and also our main page website. Please visit our website at www.prntexas.org. We have great information for families with students with disabilities, youth with disabilities, everything you need to know. So I'm going to stop sharing, and now Allison Schaberg is going to start our presentation of today. She is the owner of the company Consolidated Planning Group. She's a financial planner with a lot of experience working with families with disabilities, more than 25 years working with families with disabilities. She's a passion advocate. She also is a mom of 2 kids with disabilities, so she is well experienced, and she loves to give this presentation for us. Thank you so much, Allison.
Thank you, Veronica. It's always a pleasure to be back with you. I see that we have a lot of professionals out here today, so we're glad you're here as well. And as Veronica said, we do want your questions, so you can put your questions in the chat box. If your questions are private, you can put it to just the panelists and it'll go to Veronica and myself. But if you want to open your questions up, you can certainly put them in there to everyone. So as she said, Allison Schaberg here at Consolidated Planning Group. Consolidated Planning Group is a holistic special needs planning firm. If you've attended these webinars in the past, you've kind of heard a little bit about us and who we serve and how we work. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. But today, what we are talking about is the Medicaid waivers. And if we have anybody that is attending that is out of state, today's presentation, we are primarily focusing and talking about waivers in the state of Texas. There are waivers for individuals with disabilities in every state in the United States. Those waivers are different. So if you're attending from out of state, this still may be valuable to you, but you can find out about the waivers in your state through the Health and Human Services website is usually a pretty good place to start in looking at waivers for the state that you're in. Okay, so Medicaid waivers, SSI eligibility, and preserving benefits. If you've attended in the past, we talk a lot about SSI and eligibility and preserving benefits, and there's a lot of confusion surrounding this topic on a pretty regular basis of how do you qualify for these things, how do you maintain your eligibility for these types of things, how do you get on the list, what's the timeline, how do I get services, and so we're going to talk about all of those things today. So basically, here are a list of the waivers that are in the state of Texas that we're going to be talking about today. These are Medicaid waivers. They're home and community-based HCBS waivers. And most of these waivers are designed to waive off some of the cost of care and provide services to individuals with disabilities. The different criteria, we're going to talk about some of the different criteria to qualify for these waivers, but the point of the waivers is designed to waive off some of the cost of care to provide home and community-based services for an individual with a disability to prevent residential placement is typically what they're looking for on this. So we've got the class waiver, community living assistance and support services, deaf, blind with multiple disabilities. We love acronyms around here, so you'll hear the acronym names and not always the full name, but we put the full names on here. And in case you're wondering, today's presentation is being recorded, but following the presentation today, we are also going to provide a PDF of today's slides, so you'll have a record of this. So you don't have to take copious notes. You're going to get a PDF of these slides. So the deaf blind with multiple disabilities, DBMD, home and community-based services, which is HCS. We have Texas Home Living, TXHML, medically dependent children's program, MDCP. We have the STAR Plus waiver. We have the YES waiver, and we have the Community First Choice waiver. So there's multiple waivers that you can be on the list for, not necessarily on one list versus the other. You don't have to pick one. You can be on all of the lists for the waivers that are appropriate for your loved one. So going a little bit deeper, the community living assistance, the class waiver, this is going to give home and community-based support to children and adults with related conditions. There are over 200 related conditions like cerebral palsy, spina bifida. The related condition must have occurred prior to the child's age 22. So this is the class waiver. The deaf, blind, and multiple disabilities is just that. This is going to give services for children and adults who are deaf, blind, or have a related condition that leads to deaf or blindness and who have another disability. So it's deaf, blind, and another disability is basically what this waiver is for. Home and community-based services, also known as HCS, this is going to give services and supports to children and adults with intellectual disability or a related condition who live with their families in their own homes or small group homes with no more than 4 people. And then, of course, we have the MDCP program. This is going to give services to children and adults who are 20 and younger who are medically fragile as an alternative to receiving services in a nursing facility. Let's see. Okay, so the STAR Plus Home and Community-Based Services, this gives services to adults over the age of 21 to keep them in their community and not in a nursing home. Texas Home Living is services to children and adults with intellectual disability or related condition who live in their own home or in their family's home. The YES waiver, this is another Medicaid program that gives home and community-based services to children under the age of 19 with serious mental, emotional, and behavioral difficulties. And I always take a little pause here because one of the issues that we've had as a state is that the waiting list for these waivers to get services is quite long. It's anybody's guess on how long it is. We hear 14, we hear 17 years. We've had isolated people that have been on the list longer than that. But I take a pause at the Youth Empowerment Service waiver, the YES waiver, because in a lot of counties across the state, there is not a waiting list for the YES waiver. So when you're thinking about the YES waiver, primarily what the primary diagnosis needs to be is in the mental health category, not like the mental health category is secondary. Okay, so for instance, if a person is disabled, that maybe they're nonverbal, non-ambulatory, that's their primary disability. They may have some mental health challenges, but the YES waiver is probably not going to be a good fit for them. Think of I use the term all of the alphabet soup and labels when it comes to the mental health. If we've got ADHD, BPD, OCD, ADD, there's so many, bipolar, the borderline personality disorder, some of the other anxiety, depression, other categories that may qualify an individual for this particular waiver is, maybe they've had some run-ins with the law, maybe they have run away, they're basically at-risk youth for any number of those reasons. And so this is for children under the age of 19. And I take a pause here because what we've seen is over the last couple of years with the pandemic, we are reaching, if we weren't already there even prior to pandemic, we're reaching really crisis levels with mental health issues across the U.S., not just here in Texas, but there are services, and this is a wraparound program, so we'll talk more about that. Community First Choice, this allows states to provide home and community-based services, based attendance services and supports to Medicaid recipients with disabilities. It can help with the activities of daily living, health-related tasks through hands-on assistance and supervision. And this also provides services to help the individual learn how to care for themselves. So, as I mentioned earlier, again, these waivers are really designed to waive off the cost of some of the care for some of the following things, and designed to keep your loved one out of a residential facility if possible. The services that are available in all waivers can be adaptive aids, financial management services, supported employment assistance, minor home modifications, and some of them respite. Services in all but MDCP include children's Medicaid, basically these services are already all in them except for the MDCP. So professional therapies, occupational therapy, PT, speech therapy. We've seen all kinds of different therapies as well, like equine therapy, art therapy. We've even seen massage therapy as some of these therapies that are outside the home. Unlimited prescriptions, dental, and nursing. I'm going to take a pause. Do we have something in the chat box?
Yes, we have a question, Allison. We have a question. It says, how do people even start applying for the YES services? I wanted just to make a comment, Allison. I hear here in Travis County, the YES waiver has a waiting list. I mean, it's because of the pandemic, there is a lot of people, that need those services. And if you really need it, please be on the list. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I can't speak for all counties, and the counties are, it is by county for these waivers, and I am going to go over in detail exactly how you get on the waiting list for these waivers or how you call and find out about it. So your county may or may not have a waiting list. It just depends on, kind of on where you're located. But the YES waiver services and the waiting list for the YES waiver is, if there is a waiting list, it is much shorter. It's not 17 years or anything like that, because the YES waiver program typically lasts about a year. I've seen it last as long as 3 years. They can renew it, but basically when you're approved for the YES waiver, it usually it's designed to last about a year. But I've seen them continuing it, past a year. In several occasions, I've seen that happen. It is possible for that to happen. And then there are also
experience for class. We waited 12 years to have it. 12 years. It was our waiting period. I don't know how much is there.
And I think, a few years ago, there was a point a few years ago, and forgive me for not knowing the exact years, but the list was kind of frozen there for a couple of years. There wasn't really a lot of movement happening on it. It is moving right now, and I think for to say a specific number of years, I think it depends on the waiver. I think that there's a lot of factors, but the bottom line is, it is a long time for basically all of the others. I mean, we're talking years, not months, in some examples, but we're going to talk about some other examples where a person may move up on that list a little bit quicker. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Some of the other waiver services are transportation, residential services, equine therapy, day hab. Those are some other examples of some of the other waivers. We also had a question that said, do you need to have Medicaid for the YES waiver? So the answer is yes. The Medicaid, but it is not based off of the family's income for that qualification for the YES waiver. It is based off of the individual or the child's assets, not yours for the YES waiver. So in all of these cases, you do have to maintain your Medicaid qualification for these waivers, and we're going to talk more about that in just a moment. But that is a great question. Okay, so waiver general eligibility. So I'm going to start at the bottom here. Eligibility is not determined until an individual comes up to the top of the wait list. So you don't have to prove that your loved one is disabled at the time that you put them on the list. It's when they come up on the list and that they have a slot available for them that they're going to see whether or not they meet the criteria for these waivers. A lot of the waivers, not all of them, have criteria of intellectual disability of basically IQ of 70 or below is kind of the general consensus. It could be 75 and below if there are multiple disabilities. But so even if you have a loved one that their IQ is much higher than that, or they're around that range, but maybe not quite that low, we still recommend that you would have them on the list. We've seen IQ changes over the years with individuals with disabilities. We've seen things happen We've seen things like, for instance, I can think of one case where there was an autism diagnosis, and there can be some real mental health challenges in the later years, the later teen years and early 20s, maybe sometimes more so in boys, and maybe sometimes leaning in the schizophrenia department. So from that perspective, we've seen IQ changes to where the person would have not otherwise qualified, but with the changes in the mental health and things like that, it affected those IQ scores. So anyway, it doesn't cost you anything to put yourself on the list or to have your loved one on the list, and because that eligibility is going to come up later. So as far as financial eligibility for all waivers, except for the Texas Home Living, it's within 300% of SSI. Currently, right now, the SSI amount is $841 a month, so 300% of that is $2523 as far as income eligibility, and it does not look at parental income on that. But again, the individuals are going to have to meet the functional eligibility criteria for that specific waiver. One thing, and Veronica, you can put this in the chat box for us if you will. You can read a lot about this on Navigate Life Texas. There's a website called Navigate Life Texas, and it's just a great website with a lot of resources on a lot of other topics as well. But there is a pretty good explanation on each of the waivers out there as well. So that may be one place that you want to educate yourself. And then again, the other place that we were talking about was Health and Human Services is another place that you can read a lot more about these waivers. Okay, so there's two funding paths for the waivers. So basically, we're promoting independence. This is going to, again, prevent or divert individuals from institutions, and it's going to address crisis. This also can help individuals move or transition from an institution to home and community-based services. And so here's where we're talking about the interest list. It's first come, first serve. It's statewide. The wait can be as long as 14 years. Again, we've heard 14 to 17 lately. And again, I think it's anybody's guess exactly what the number and the timeline is. And each of the waivers are a little bit different. Okay, so so you put that in the chat box. Thank you for doing that, Veronica. You're always great at that. Okay, the wait list. So we've been talking about the wait list. Sometimes it's called the wait list. Sometimes you might refer to, somebody might say to you, is your child on the interest list? They're basically talking about the same thing. We love to throw around the different acronyms and different names for things that are actually the same, and then you feel confused by that. So if that's happened to you, you're not alone. So what is a LIDA or a LIDA? Whether you call it a LIDA or a LIDA, we don't care. It's the Local Intellectual and Developmental Disability Authority. Basically, when it's coming to getting on the interest list, these are the places and where you're going to get on the interest list and how you're going to get on the interest list. So basically, HCS, Texas Home Living, Community First Choice, and we should have yes waiver on here next to Community First Choice. You're going to call your local intellectual disability authority to get yourself on those lists. And so oftentimes we hear people say, well, my child is on all the lists. I called my local authority and my child's on all the lists. And your child, if you called your local authority and you put them on the list that the local authority manages, then you're on their list, but your child may not be, unless you call the specific number above the MDCP class DBMD for that waiver interest list. You can call that 800 number and get your loved one on that list. So that's a separate list. This is going to be a clickable link to find out who your local authority is. Local authorities are by county. Veronica, who is your local authority in Austin?
Here in Austin, we have two. We have one for Travis County, and it's Integral Care. And we have one Williamson County, that's in Round Rock, and it's Blue Bonnet Trails.
Yes,
so
Blue Bonnet Trails.
Blue Bonnet Trails, and Travis County is Integral Care.
And so this website that I have on the screen, again, you guys are going to get the PDF of these slides today. This is going to be, all you do is click this website, and then you put your zip code in for what your home address is, and it is going to tell you exactly who your local authority is and who your other supports are in your area for getting on these lists. We also have an 800 number for the Star Plus waiver program as well. So this is a real important slide, and this is what you're going to want to check on. So here's the interesting thing. I find this, I don't know, a little funny, but not that much. The interesting thing is to get on these lists, you actually do have to call your local authority. There's not this like mothership website that you go to and you create a username and password and you add your child to the list, and then you can go and check and see where your child is on the list. Somebody needs to create that. I don't have time, but I sure would love. Wouldn't it be great? It would take so much off of the local authorities as well if people could just get themselves on the list and kind of see where they are and where their status is on the list. Your local authority typically reaches out every 2 years to make sure that you still need to be on the list, and they remove people from the list that no longer need to be on the list. But it is very, very important.
Do you want to still be on the list, and you have to say yes, and that's it? They call you usually.
Yeah, they're supposed to call you. They're supposed to reach out. Some of them have done a really good job of this through the pandemic. A lot of the local authorities have had high turnover rate, people with COVID, people out. A lot of things going on in your local authorities that, they're working really hard and trying really hard. So I've heard of some that aren't making those calls. But also the important thing that you should know is that when you put yourself on the list, so say you're in Travis County and you put yourself on Integral, the one that she just mentioned, and then you move to Williamson County, and now you're Bluebonnet Trails, you're going to want to call your local authority and let them know that you've moved to another county and that have your case transferred to that other county, because that will be your new local authority. It doesn't change your status on the list. You don't start over, but you will have a new local authority. And also, it's super, super important to update address, phone number, email address, all of your contact information with them. If you have any major changes, you need to update them, because if they can't get a hold of you, they can take you off the list. Do we have a few questions, Veronica?
We have a few questions. We have the one. So do we need to register our child in all the waiver lists?
I don't think it hurts anything. I mean, if your child isn't deaf, blind with multiple disabilities, I might not register for that one. But I mean, I don't think it hurts anything to put them on the interest list, because again, if you put them on one list and they're not on the other, you're increasing your chances that you may come up for one particular waiver. It may not be the one that you wanted first, but it might be the pathway to the one that you do want, or the one that will be more favorable to you.
So Texcana calls me, I think is the local authority for them, calls me periodically to tell me what number she is. Are you saying I need to still call the 877 number?
So no, the only reason you would need to call these numbers is if you need to add your child to the wait list. If you are not sure that your child is on all of the wait lists. Texana is the local authority for Fort Bend County, like Sugar Land, Katy, that kind of area. Harris Center used to be MHMRA. Harris Center is for Houston. And I mean, again, they're all across the state. They're all different, but yes, they do call from time to time. The only reason you need to call is to see, so if your local authority is calling you, then you can know that you're on the interest list for these. If you haven't asked to be put on the yes waiver list, then you're not on the yes waiver list. So if that's of interest to you, then you may want to call and follow up with your local authority for that. But the main thing to know is that not all waivers are on with your local authority, and this is where we're talking about MDCP class, the DBMD, as well as the Star Plus. And so if you want to be on those waivers, then those are the places that you're going to need to call for that.
So do all the Medicaid waivers programs offer the opportunity resource for a parent or guardian to be paid as a caregiver for individuals on Medicaid waivers over the age of 18.
Over the age of 18, I think so that could probably be a whole other meeting. And if somebody in the chat box, some of the professionals that are familiar with that, if they want to address that in the chat box, I certainly invite that. There is a such thing as being paid to be a caregiver for your adult with disabilities. There is certain criteria for that. There's other ways as well through Social Security for a child in care benefit in the event that a person is either disabled or retired, and the other person is a homemaker. There is such things as a child in care benefit as well. So there are opportunities for that, and it doesn't necessarily apply to everyone in every situation. There is very specific criteria for being paid as a caregiver.
The last one, Allison, and then we stop. All the Medicaid waivers program extended eligibility for services outside of Texas?
So all Medicaid programs in the state of Texas are all state of Texas. All Medicaid programs everywhere are state related. So if you move outside of the state, so let's say, for instance, you're getting the HCS waiver in the state of Texas, and then you move to Louisiana, you're going to need to find out what the waivers are in the state of Louisiana. You're going to need to get on the interest list in Louisiana. And just because you had a waiver in Texas does not at all mean that when you move to Louisiana that you're going to get a waiver there. The wait lists are different in different states. Some states are better than others. There's a lot of states that are better than others. And also that is true if you're getting SSI and Medicaid and moving to another state, regardless of getting a waiver, that you would need to update your state here that you are moving out of state, and then you would need to connect with Medicaid in your new state as well. Okay, so if we're moving on, I want to talk about the crisis diversion slots. If you or your loved one is in crisis, you can contact your local authority and tell them that you would like to request an HCS crisis diversion waiver. So there is a such thing as a crisis diversion slot, but these are not, used or given out loosely. So your local authority is your first point of contact if you find yourself in crisis. What is crisis anyway? Do we all live in crisis? But really what we're talking about when we're talking about crisis is your loved one a threat to themselves or others? Have they hurt you or other family members? Are they suicidal? Are they at risk of being placed outside of the home immediately because you cannot, you're no longer able to provide the care services that you once were? Another example of a crisis example might be that the caregiver has died or become incapacitated due to illness, or one of the caregivers, one of the parents has died or became ill and requires the other parent to provide care services for that individual. So the care services for the other loved one has kind of fallen by the wayside, or you're at capacity. So those are some examples. There's all kinds of examples. I mean, again, we could probably talk all day about the examples, but just think true crisis, threat to yourself or others, and major illnesses or complications. I've seen two, and I had two clients that got crisis diversion slots last year. One was a single dad who had moved his own mother down to help care for the child, and the child was violent, and the child was hurting grandma, and the dad had to work to provide services, to provide money for the household and for the child. And so that was an example. Okay. And then I saw another one that was approved, and it was an adult who the grandparents had custody of the adult with disabilities, and the grandmother died, and grandfather still worked and needed to work to provide care for the grandson, and the grandson was a threat to himself or others. And so when we have a loved one that is a threat to themselves or others, There is limited care options. We have more limited options as far as school, day habs, transitions, programs in general if they're violent. So those are two examples that I know of that that needed a diversion slot, and they absolutely did get it. So your local authority is your first point of contact for these crisis diversion slots. I hear all across the state, so I'm not naming like one local authority over another. I've heard that some local authorities are very, very responsive to the crisis, the crisis, request, and others are not. Most of them do have a crisis contact line on your local authority, so you can look that up as well. But the second place, so if you've requested a crisis diversion slot, you're truly in crisis, you truly need help, you're not getting anywhere with your local authority, there's two other places that I know of that you can reach out. It could be the ARC of Texas, which could be one place that may be able to provide some intervention and some help in getting that crisis diversion slot opened up for you. And then the other place that I am aware of is an organization called Every Child. They're in Austin, but they serve all across all across Texas, and they have what I call boots on the ground in various major areas all across Texas. So again, if you're running into a brick wall on getting a crisis diversion slot, those are some of your places that you can contact in addition to your local authority. So it's the ARC of Texas. Veronica, you can put this in the chat box as well. And it's Every Child, and they're out of Austin. How are we on questions?
We have some. Do you know, Allison, does the Star Plus has an age limitation? Oh, she's busy. She's gonna.
The Star Plus. I understand that Star Plus starts in adulthood. The Star Plus waiver. That is my understanding. If anybody has a clearer understanding on the Star Plus, if you'll put that in the chat box, that would be great.
And we have a simpler question. What is a waiver program for? Why special needs children need a waiver program, in your opinion?
Let me see. I'm sorry. I'm looking for that question.
In the chat, what is a waiver program for? So you talk about in the beginning of the presentation, the waivers are for to have more help for family that has individuals with disabilities and prevent them to be in a facility, right?
Yeah, and so it may provide attendant services, like where maybe it will pay for an attendant to come in your home and help. It may pay for respite services. It's going to pay for a lot of these therapies that we were talking about. But the whole point of these waivers is to waive off some of the cost of care that would otherwise be out-of-pocket expense for you, for your family, in an effort to keep your loved one in home and community-based services. Because the belief is that our loved ones with disabilities thrive in the home and community-based services as opposed to residential facilities. Now, having said that, everybody's situation is uniquely different. And there are some people that have loved ones that are really, really thriving in a residential treatment facility. And that may be because of the level of need and the level of care that individual needs. That's truly where they belong. But ultimately, the thought process is keeping individuals close to home and community-based services close to their network is the best way. And so these are designed to offset some of those expenses in an effort to keep them in the community.
Mm-hmm. Great. What phone number can I call to check on where are on Medicaid waiver programs in Texas? So I think you put it in your slide, right? The phone number that
yes.
What they are in.
Let me go back to that. So basically, again, that's going to be your local authority. So you can kind of check and see where they are on the list. And this website right here, and again, we're going to send this out. You can copy and paste that in the chat box, Veronica, if you want to. But what you can do there is when you go to that website, you're going to put your zip code in, and it is going to tell you who your local authority is and what their phone number is. And that's where you can call to get that information.
Okay. You want to answer more questions?
Sure.
Okay. And more questions. If the child moves up on the top of the interested list with no insurance, does he still qualify for these services?
Yes. Your status on having health insurance or not for your child does not negate their availability for these waivers. Again, so the waivers are Medicaid eligibility, and when you come up to the top of the list, they're going to kind of talk through what you do, how you apply, and how it's based off of the kids' income and assets and not yours. They're going to walk you through all of that. That's a great question. Thank you for asking that.
And we saw, I'm seeing and reading in the chat box that people are saying that it starts at 21, the Star Plus waiver.
Okay, that's great. Any additional questions?
I think that's it for right now.
Okay, so as far as the PASRR diversion and transition from nursing facilities and or specialized services, so some of the waivers again are designed so there is a diversion in this category as far as trying to transition from a nursing facility and or specialized services. Okay, so when we start talking, when we're talking about all of these things, Consolidated Planning Group, again, we're a holistic special needs planning firm. And what does that mean? There's a lot of differences, and we get a lot of calls on a pretty regular basis of, can you help me set up a special needs trust? Can you help me set up guardianship or things like that? So I like to simplify things when it comes to planning for special needs. That there's a number of professionals that you work with, but on the special needs planning side of the house, there's two. There's the special needs planner. There is basically the special needs attorney. So we're basically the money in the right buckets, making sure we're preserving eligibility for state and federally funded programs. We're nationally certified as Social Security advisors, so we really get in the weeds with everybody on what they need to do and how they need to apply Medicaid, SSI, Social Security, Disability, all of those types of things. But we also are working with families to say that have a loved one that's going to need care for the rest of their life, that say, hey, I don't even know how much I need to set aside for that. What is the future care cost estimate? How do I plan for a child that may have care needs 20 to 30 years after I'm gone? So we're able to develop those future care cost estimates and help in that line. And the attorneys, they're the paper, they're the legal documents. These are the wills, the trust, the special needs trust, the guardianship, power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney. They're going to kind of walk you through all of those and provide those documents and the legal documents. So the attorneys, they basically don't do what we do, and we basically don't do what they do, but we work very closely together in helping you formulate your plan and complete your plan. So we always, say we want you to, we spend a little time talking about the differences between us and how we're alike, how we're similar, but what we do differently. So when you're getting started in planning for special needs, and some of you may have been planning for many, many years. Some of you may just be getting started. Oftentimes every week we get people calling saying, I just need help and I don't even know where to start. So here I am. And wherever you are, that's okay. But getting started, what you're going to want to do is gather all the necessary planning documents. What is this? This is Social Security statements. This is information about any insurance that you have in place, life insurance, health insurance, disability. This is investment accounts, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, IRAs, 529Cs. We don't see them very often, but sometimes UTMA or UGMA accounts. ABLE accounts. These are all of the things that you're going to want to pull together. Any legal documents that you already have in place, like maybe a will or a trust, guardianship, those types of things. We suggest developing a letter of intent when you're starting the planning process. And a letter of intent, I like to refer to it as a family love letter. As parents, I always jokingly say we've forgot more than anybody will ever know about our loved one with special needs. And sometimes that's true in your household. If you're the caregiver, that may be true for you. And if something happened to you that your spouse doesn't know the same things that you know about your loved one with special needs, we've seen that as well. But the letter of intent, or also the family love letter, is basically a document. We do have templates for this, a document that really states everything there is to know about your loved one with special needs. What is their full name? What is their social? What is their date of birth? Where were they born? What county? What schools have they attended? What are their primary diagnoses? What are their medications that they take? Who are their doctors that they see? Any information that is relevant to them and their ongoing care, their future care, what their likes and dislikes are, what their interests are, what their allergies might be, what the religious preferences might be. This is something that if you became incapacitated today, that I could pick up and I could read and I could have a much clearer understanding about your loved one with special needs. This is important with all people with disabilities, but especially for individuals with disabilities, with intellectual disabilities, as well as when they're nonverbal, because they cannot communicate their needs as you would. So we want you to think about your vision, how you hope things will look for your special needs child, but also important, when we have a child or a loved one that may need care the rest of their life, you've got to look at your vision and how you hope things will look for you or you and your spouse if you're married. We spend 25 to 35 years working, and so the time that we're spending working, we have this vision or goal of one day that we're going to have this enjoyable retirement. Maybe we're going to travel, whatever it is that you're going to do. And if you have a loved one that has care needs for the rest of their life, not just yours, it is really, really important to find some balance and find some respite, find some balance in your hopes and dreams of your retirement, and also providing for the care needs in the manner in which that you want to for your loved one. Veronica, how are we on questions?
We have some questions. I just put in the chat box, guys, also the links that Allison mentioned, but about the Every Child and the Arc of Texas are there, and how to locate your local authority to see where are you on the lists. So we have from Deborah in the chat, how is the Star Plus waiver differ from class waiver program?
So there are different budgets, and I'm going to send a document today. When we send that the slides today, I'm also going to send a document, and I'm sorry in advance, it's like 24 pages long, but it was last updated, which is correct, in 2018, which basically describes all of the waivers, the criteria for the waivers, and the budgets, and the different waivers have different budgets. Some budgets are bigger than others, so we'll provide that. We'll put that out in today's email that we put out with the recording.
Yeah, and also there are people explaining about the Star Plus. We have a comment from Clarissa. They said disability children are able to receive the Star Kit Medicaid on patients turn 21. That will be then transition to Star Plus Medicaid. Because I think I saw a question if they are going to lose Medicaid, they are in the waiver or something like that.
Well, I think you go from kind of Star Kids to Star Plus as kind of this age change, and they're not really going to lose it. They just transition over to the more appropriate program. And there are times that you have to reapply, and that has been a thing in Texas. So if you've ever got a letter saying your kid is canceled from Medicaid and you like lose your mind for a few minutes. That has been happening. It's been happening more so over the last couple of years with the pandemic, and simply you just need to pay attention to the letter, reapply, as soon as possible. It is possible that you'll get that letter once they turn 18, that they get knocked off. It is possible that once you retire and they switch over from SSI to SSDI, that they might get kicked off, but they're going to get put back on due to the Pickle Amendment. So if you've ever got that, just know not to panic. Do follow up. You do need to follow up, and you actually may need to reapply. But it's just kind of a glitch. It's kind of an issue in the system. So that can happen, but don't panic. It's going to be okay. And again, in that example where a person is the individual with the disability is getting SSI and Medicaid, and then mom or dad retires and they switch over basically to RSDI, Retirement Survivors Disability Income. A lot of times they'll get knocked off there, but there is a such thing as a Pickle Amendment. The person that passed the law, the last name was Pickle, but the Pickle Amendment basically says that if you were receiving Medicaid, if you were on SSI and receiving Medicaid and then switched over to SSDI or RSDI, that you're not going to lose Medicaid for that reason. So they'll keep your eligibility. So the main thing, and I mentioned this earlier, is we got to maintain our Medicaid eligibility for all of these waivers. These are Medicaid waivers through the state of Texas, so Medicaid eligibility is required for these. So what we're talking about now, we're kind of switching over as far as, preserving eligibility for state and federally funded programs. We're talking about SSI and Social Security. SSI is a means-based program. What I want to say is we could have and we do have entire presentations on SSI and Social Security. All of those presentations do live on our on our YouTube channel, which is in the chat box, and it's at the end of this presentation as well. So if you've got deeper questions, we do presentations on this all the time. We've also even partnered with Andy Hardwick with the Social Security Administration, where he does a presentation and partners with us. But SSI is a means-based program. Most of our kids aren't qualifying for SSI. We make too much money, and they don't qualify for SSI while they're minors. Their qualifications change when they turn 18. Instead of it looking at your assets and your income, it looks at their assets and income. So SSI is a means-based program. Currently for 2022, the full amount monthly for SSI is $841 per month. So if an individual is getting the full amount of SSI, they're getting $841 per month. Along with SSI comes Medicaid right away. Social Security, a lot of times we hear parents say, my child's getting Social Security. Now, it's true sometimes they are, but most of the time they're not. When you're in your 40s or 50s and you're still working and your child is turned 18 and they're getting benefits, it's usually SSI. When a child is getting SSDI, also known as Social Security, sometimes called RSDI, so SSDI, RSDI, also Social Security, all in the same, okay? That is a worker-based program. You actually pay into the system for Social Security disability. So if your child's never worked, they've never paid into that system. If your child's disability started prior to age 22, they can be considered for childhood disability benefits under a parent's record. When you retire or go on Social Security disability yourself, they'll be entitled to 50% of your benefits. So in the example that you're retired or you've gone on Social Security disability, or also the example where one parent has died, that's the Retirement Survivor Disability Income. Your disabled adult child whose disability started prior to age 22 will be eligible for 50% of your Social Security benefit. It's not going to reduce yours. So if yours is $4,000, they'll get $2,000. That's the general easy math. It's not always easy because there is family maximums, and if we have spouses drawing off of other spouses' record, that's why you reach out to us. We have specialized software that calculates all of this because we are nationally certified as Social Security advisors, so we can help you with that. But basically 50% of your benefit your child will be eligible for. So if they were already getting SSI, then you retire, then they're eligible for 50% of your benefit. They're basically going to switch over typically from SSI to to the SSDI or RSDI. And then after 2 years, they'll be eligible for Medicare. Okay, so that's a mouthful, and I know it's confusing. We talk about it a lot, but do go to our YouTube channel. And if you have specific questions about your unique situation, you can certainly reach out to us, and we'll talk to you more about that. Basically, there's two places that you can have money outside of an ABLE account. I mean, outside of your regular checking account that's not going to count against you for SSI. So SSI is a means-based program. Basically, the individual can't have more than $2,000 in their name, $3,000 if they're married, and it depends on the number if the person's a minor or not. It can be all the way up to $5,000, but generally the number is $2,000. You can have one car, one house. So for an individual who is single, who is not married, they can have one house, they can have one car, they can have up to $2,000 in their name to maintain their eligibility for SSI and Medicaid. So you can have money in a special needs trust and an ABLE account are two places that you can have money outside of the $2,000 limit that will not count against you and not cause you to lose your benefits. So this is very important. We can help you set up an ABLE account. That's the financial side, where the money, the attorneys are going to help on the special needs trust. And oftentimes, what happens, the special needs trusts are typically funded with either current assets that are left over post-retirement, or with life insurance that the trust is basically the beneficiary. So for an ABLE account, what you need to know is you can contribute $16,000 a year and an additional $12,880 if working. Disability must have began prior to age 26. And furthermore, to maintain your eligibility for SSI and Medicaid, you cannot have more than $100,000 in an ABLE account. Okay, so no more than $100,000 in an ABLE account, or you will disqualify for SSI and Medicaid. This comes up a lot because people say, well, I thought you could have up to $500,000 in an ABLE account, and that is true. You could have up to $500,000 into an ABLE account, but you're not going to qualify for SSI and Medicaid. So if you're trying to maintain your eligibility for your waivers, if you're trying to maintain your eligibility for Medicaid, you have to know that you cannot have more than $100,000 in an ABLE account, but you can have an unlimited amount of money in a special needs trust, and that may be why you need both. Furthermore, a special needs trust can pay for housing, basically housing, food, and shelter, where an ABLE account can pay for rent, housing, food, and shelter. And the special needs trust basically shouldn't pay for rent, housing, food, and shelter if you're getting SSI and Medicaid. It looks like we've got a lot of questions, and we're coming here to the end. So I'm gonna let you roll with the questions, Veronica.
Sure. We have this question several times in the chat box. In case of HSC crisis, diversion waiver, children with special needs with no Medicaid still have a chance to qualify? Yes,
absolutely, because they'll do the Medicaid qualification based off of the child, not you. So yes, that is a possibility.
They're asking for the letter of intent. One person, I have the name. I can send you that. I think I have it from you, Allison. I can send them that letter of intent template that Allison had. Right? Yeah,
we'll go ahead and attach that to everybody. Usually we just say, hey, reach out to us and we'll send that to us, send that to you. We're not here to, we want you to take the steps that you need to take to be successful with your loved one, and we're happy to share that information. We put these webinars and this information out there for free on purpose because, as you mentioned earlier, I am a parent. I've got one that's turning 18 next week. Geez, I know. And then I have one that's already transitioned into adulthood, and this stuff is hard. And I know that's why you're here. You're frustrated. It's overwhelming. It's a lot to take in, And if they're turning 18 for the first time, you've never done this before, you're kind of walking through this. And so we definitely want to help you. So today they're going to get a copy of the slides. They're going to get a copy of that 24-page document of explaining the waivers. And we'll go ahead and put the letter of intent out there to everybody in the recording today as well. So these are some things that just really should be on your special needs planning radar. We do have webinars on every single one of these topics. If you have questions about ABLE accounts, they're out there. One big thing that you do need to know, and I didn't mention, I try to mention on every single webinar we have, sorry if I'm a broken record, but if you have child support, if you're in a divorce situation, you've got child support coming in for your loved one with special needs, and that child support is going to continue post age 18, you need to get that child support directed to a first party special needs trust, or that child support is going to be counted against them for SSI purposes and may make them ineligible for SSI and Medicaid until that child support gets redirected. So you're going to need to work with a divorce attorney, a child support attorney to get that. And in the most ideal situation, the two of you agree to just write it up, but you're not changing the amount, you're just changing where it's directed to, that it's directed to a first party special needs trust. Of course, you're going to have to get that set up, but that's a big deal, and it can cause big issues for you if you do not know that.
We have some questions without time to answer them. I don't know, Allison, maybe we can see the question later on and send responses, or they can email you or me with these questions and continue to answer them, you know.
Yes, as always, feel free to reach out and submit your individual questions. I know that, you know, when we have this many people on a webinar, there's always a lot of questions, and oftentimes more questions than we have time to answer, but we're happy to chat with you about this. I just like to share this slide. That this is the team at Consolidated Planning Group. We are members of the Academy of Special Needs Planners, also again National Social Security advisors, so we can help you with your questions in that department as well. And again, deeper and wider on any of the topics, if you want to have a whole webinar on SSI and SSDI and those types of things, or ABLE accounts, whatever it may be, we definitely have that out on our YouTube channel. Our consultations are always free, so if you're interested in talking and asking about your specific questions, certainly feel free to reach out. We're happy to chat with you. You can take a picture of this QR code or follow the links and schedule an appointment at a time that is convenient for you. This is our link for our Facebook and our YouTube channel. As always, Veronica, it's been a pleasure. I got 101, so I know that we're ending now. I'd like to thank everybody for being here with us today, and I would just like to give you a little ounce of encouragement too. You've got this. You can do this. It is hard. It is difficult. And it's not you, and you're not dumb. I know a lot of parents say, I just feel so dumb about this, or I feel like I don't know what I don't know. You're not alone by any stretch of the imagination. There is help for you out there. Partners Resource Network, we're here to help, and we're certainly glad that you attended today. But just I hope you leave this meeting, and I hope you feel empowered that you've got this, and that you've got a few next steps that you can take, and we'll help you get there. Thanks so much, Veronica.
Thank you, Allison. Bye, everybody. See you guys in the next one.
Thank you. Take care.